Never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot, stated Richard Feynman. What are some real-life examples of this?
I work in mental health and have known so many healthcare professionals with advanced degrees who I wouldn't trust to take care of a goldfish and can't believe counsel people on a regular basis.
My sister-in-law is a substance abuse and domestic violence victims counselor with a master's in clinical therapy or something like that. Her new husband is an alcoholic and drug addict with a history of domestic violence. This woman married exactly the problems she is supposed to be advocating against.
I work in software and have a PhD. At my company, to be anything above a mid-manager, you need a doctorate of some capacity, be it a DBA, JD, or PhD. I've seen one or two other random ones floating around. The number of people who have PhDs in software and don't understand basics of computer science is alarming. I had a guy tell me that a graphics card is a waste of money because software is always faster than hardware. That's before we get into the people who have BS, MS, and PhD in science, then believe the world is only 6,000 years old. Carbon dating is a myth, and that there was a literal flood where Noah actually loaded animals on the ark. In fact, a lot of them travel to this museum in TN where there's allegedly parts of the ark.
Heard about a mechanical engineer who is a flat earther. So yeah, him or any engineer, physicist, or astronomer that believes in that. The fact that a single one can get their degree and then turn around years later and believe in something fundamentally incompatible with the basic physics required to make sense of their degree is baffling.
It's from a fictional podcast that uses real-world items, people, etc. as part of its setting. But here's a quote from it. Everyone thinks they're too smart to get involved in a cult. I'm sure you do. You think that of the first mention of aliens, or the end of the world, or the lost book of the Bible where Jesus buried his holy staff in the foothills of the Himalayas. You'd go running. Trouble is, that misunderstands how it works. I mean, when I was with the Divine Chain, some of the smartest people there were also the most committed. Intelligence doesn't make you less prone to taking on bad ideas. It just makes you better at defending them to other people and to yourself. Smart people can believe some truly ridiculous things and then deploy all the reason and logic at their disposal to justify them. Because a belief doesn't begin in your mind. It begins in your feelings. Cults are very good at finding you when you're at your lowest point, when you're most emotionally vulnerable. And when you're at that point, it's astounding what can crawl into your heart and start to fester there.
In my opinion, people who are truly smart have a much better grasp on just how little they know. It's the reason that you think you know everything when you're a child or teenager. You genuinely don't know how much you don't know. So someone who is above average in intelligence has that same phenomenon we all experience with age, but on a slightly larger scale. We all grow up and realize how easily we can be wrong, but really smart people have that experience more often. It seems like it sometimes makes them more willing to grant outlandish things that seem absurd and obviously wrong, but they are, in a strange way, engaging in intelligent thought, accepting that you don't have all the answers and the world is far stranger than it seems. It's a bit of a backfire, but it makes a weird kind of sense to me.
Nobel disease. There are a ton of laureates that go conspiratorial batshit later in life.
Kary Mullis is the worst one, and it really emboldens other conspiracy theorists. He won the Nobel Prize for inventing the PCR test. Then he denied AIDS existed while in a government position, leading to 330,000 deaths, and said climate change wasn't real because his astrologer told him so. Oh, and ghosts. Anti-vaxxers love him.
I think Mullis was partly an acid casualty. Dude did a ton of LSD, and it made him even crazier. For example, in his autobiography, he talks about meeting a talking raccoon in the woods.
Helped some mates move house. One was a uni student doing a double degree in computer science and something else very challenging. While we were packing boxes, he asked if he could borrow a saw. When I asked why, it was so he could shorten the legs on the dining table so it would fit out the door. The look on his face when I grabbed one of the legs and started unscrewing it was priceless, as was the look when I asked him how he thought they got it in the room in the first place.
You can also pivot most furniture. I don't understand how his only answer was to damage it.
In my old university in Germany in the early 2000s, the university was old, really old, and when I started, they just began modernizing the lecture halls, etc. The German department got a new, fancy, state-of-the-art lecture hall with any kind of technology you could wish for. The professors got extensive training on how to use it. There were some of them who, after 3 months, still didn't know how to switch on the lights. Don't even talk about the microphone or how to open and close the blinds on the skylight. They didn't originally plan on having an overhead projector there, but after a few weeks, they relented and provided one because the professors didn't know any other way. In their defense, the other lecture halls were so old that they still had the hole for the inkwell in the tables.
I had an evolutionary biologist teacher in college who used an overhead, and it was amazing. He used one of those plastic scroll things so he could write and move on, write and move on. It was amazing because it caused him to slow down. He talked and wrote, and it gave us all time to follow along and write along. He also had those scanned, and we could get them online if we missed a day or missed a bit. He would write it out so he would constantly have to be there and present rather than just rote reading or not talking about a section.
Writing has been shown to help collect thoughts. Hearing a discussion as the visuals are put forth allows the student to understand why the hand drawing is the way it ended up. Betcha, the test was on points covered in class. I preferred that approach.
My roommate in college was is an academic genius, 35 aced in med school, RN, etc. I brought him to Walmart with me because he wanted to buy an 8-pack of Gatorade. At the self-checkout, he scanned one, saw the price was $7, and decided that must have been the price for each Gatorade. He ended up scanning the pack 7 more times and paid $56 for some Gatorade, all while thinking that was a fair price.
I think people have a hard time grasping this, but most people are very ignorant about the vast majority of things. Not because people are inherently stupid, but because we live in a very complex and specialized society. You can take the dumbest plumber in my country, and I bet he is still more knowledgeable about plumbing than 90% of people, because he has experience and knowledge in that specific field. While on the contrary, a PhD in whatever super specific science is that super specific, and even a well-educated person would be a complete idiot compared to them when it comes to the specifics.
Yes, try to take a medical doctor and put them in a science lab and they are like a baby, but that works both ways. Intelligence is more about how you apply your noggin to the tasks relevant to your own life and ambitions. IQ doesn't require depth or breadth of knowledge. It's more about critical thinking in the elements of your own life. Even simple things we think everyone should know may not be common knowledge to someone who spends all day in a lab, even if that person is fixing the world in seemingly impossible ways. I'm not trying to say that nobody is stupid. There are indeed many stupid people, even stupid PhDs, but really judging someone's intelligence based on observing them doing a few stupid things is probably not a holistic enough picture.
Sometimes it is challenging seeing someone who is very intelligent, smart, and educated in one field, and therefore assumes it must be true in all fields. Always right, can never be wrong. Will put down others regularly, and can't see that others can bring value to a situation. It's hard to witness.
Ironically, most of the staff at the university I graduated from. The problem is, they get into teacher's assistant roles during their education, transition into junior associates after they graduate, and just climb the ranks from there, often without any real working experience whatsoever. This culminated in my group project, which was 90% creating technical documentation, and more than 50% of the workload for that semester, 1630 ECTS if you're in the EU, being taught by a woman who asked us to not send her project drawings in DWG, standard industry format for vector graphics used by, among other apps, AutoCAD, because she's never used AutoCAD in her life. The sad thing, she was actually one of the better teachers there.
Well, you really should be PDFing anything you do in AutoCAD. But yeah, most of the professors I had in college had no real-world experience or quit the real world to live in a bubble. My classmate who graduated with honors and had the highest GPA in the entire college was not able to hold a job because she was only book smart. 3 years later, I'm the one who does her interview. I was an average student, and she failed it due to lack of clinical knowledge.
Some people just memorize what they are told without understanding what it is. Higher education is getting worse every year at filtering out these types.
Higher education is downright selecting for these types. They're the ones who are able to survive in an academic environment, so they pick people just like them to populate the student profession.
Education is not always an indicator of high intelligence. Some people with education may not understand simple things in everyday life. Do you consider education to be an indicator of high intelligence? Have you seen evidence to the contrary? Share your stories in the comments. Put a like and subscribe to the channel to not miss more interesting life stories.